workshop to order. I want to thank everybody for coming out and joining us this evening. This was based on a citizen's recommendation to have the next budget workshop at an evening time in a different location, and here we are. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. So without further ado, we're going to take citizen input on the proposed agenda. Well, actually, let's go. Mr. Manager, why don't you give a quick recap before we take some citizen comment? How about that?
Sure, Mr. Manager, if you don't mind, I'd like Robert to help me. We can go fast. And
okay.
Just to recap the process, this is the third budget workshop in a series of updates that, as we move through the budget year, we get better information, of course, input from citizens, direction from the commission in terms of priorities. And so we've made a lot of progress this year. You last discussed this topic in May 18th, and just since that time, we've had a lot of good new information. We've been able to evaluate kind of the status of things and make a little more refined estimates. That'll continue, in fact, but we're getting down the path. Robert, I'll say this because I think this generally frames it, and if you maybe we can highlight just kind of the things that have changed for the benefit of everybody. At the last discussion, the projected budget deficit was approximately $4 million. And when we talk about that, that's the general fund. That's those things that fund our general fund services, including police, parks and recreation, public works, things of that nature. And we were able to make a lot of progress on that over the last several weeks. I'll let Robert highlight that. I think that's important. In today, of course, is another opportunity to get direction from the mayor and commissioners as well as input from the public. So that kind of sets us up. Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, if I could highlight those changes.
Absolutely.
And then I think that's a perfect segue into public comment.
Sure. Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, Commissioners, appointed officials, and members of the public. Thank you for your attendance. Can you hear me fine? Okay. I do have a presentation. I will ask that there's a lot of progress that's been made towards this strategic plan that's set for 2024. What I will say is that we have a budget that's built for fiscal year 23 that continues that progress towards strategic objectives. It also, preserves resources for future generations. We talked about a clean general audit, so it's a responsible budget. It's remaining the leader in the delivery of public services. And so I don't have a clicker, but I will ask if my assistant across the room will go to page 5, and we'll focus on what has changed since we last talked. Got a little bit of good news, and then some other considerations. We've talked about the fact that we have anemic revenue. It's exacerbated by inflation, the pandemic. Fortunately, as we have gotten estimated property appraiser valuation numbers, those came in much higher than we expected. We had seen fiscal year 20 and 21 about 6 to 7% growth. Last year we saw 3.7% growth. So we were estimating 4.5% growth for this fiscal year that we're preparing the budget for, fiscal year 23. We've actually realized, based on those estimated valuations, 9.2% growth. That's fantastic news. It means an additional about $1.92 million in ad valorem revenue for the city, which will help us support services. I think when you look over the 4-year period, it makes sense that we saw 6 and 7, 3.7, and now 9 on average. That we're seeing regular growth of 9% and of 6%, and you've got to account for the 9% probably reflecting the fact that we went through the pandemic. Now we've been meeting regularly with the property appraiser. We've been recognizing what new businesses and buildings have been coming online, and so that also accounts for that property tax growth. So if we've got a $4 million deficit in the general fund, $2 million in additional ad valorem revenue, we're moving that needle down. Now, those numbers will be finalized in the next month. We'll get a final reconciled number mid-July. At that time, the valuation adjustment board will have met. We'll have final CRA numbers. but that's very promising news. Again, since that May 18th workshop, we've worked to develop a strategic approach then for closing that additional gap, and we've got some city staff identified options to consider. If we do a 10% reduction in road resurfacing expenditures, moving our work from 50 lane miles to 45 lane miles in fiscal year 23, that would reduce expenditures by $445,000. We are also considering a 20% reduction in general fund sidewalk construction in fiscal year 23. It would reduce expenditures by about $120,000. Now, recognize that our entire streets, roads, sidewalk maintenance and construction is about $6.5 million. So we'd be looking at a slight adjustment in the amount of work that we would do in fiscal year 23 in recognition of the deficit. We've also identified a proposed increase in the assumed vacancy factor for the general fund to move it from 3% to 3.5%. That would reduce budgeted personnel costs by about $540,000. We have looked at the vacancy factor over the years, and when we had the general fund vacancy factor at about 2.6%, we had a surplus in personnel services. When we moved it to 3.2%, there were activities in prior years, an amount of overtime, unexpected events. That 3% was a good spot, but we think that we can manage with the 3.5. It gives us the opportunity to work on that during the fiscal year 23 budget. That moves our the reduction of personnel services from $2.7 million to a $3.24 million reduction to account for those folks who have retired and then the time to hire. Going to the next slide, with these proposed changes and increased ad valorem revenue, we estimate the general fund deficit would be reduced to approximately $619,000 on page 6. And as we've been working to address the deficit, we have identified those additional requests that have been brought before you previously. The Animal Shelter Foundation, the Council on Culture and Arts, the Oasis Center, and the Commission on Status of Women and Girls, and the St. Francis Wildlife Refuge are still not recognized in the budget. You also expressed an interest in the team, the Tallahassee Emergency Assessment Mobile Unit, which provides emergency mental health responder services. If those are fully funded, then we would be working to consider additional revenue in the next month, any other expenditure reductions to close that $1.5 million gap. So much better news than where we were May 18th. Some additional information has come to our attention. We've made some recommendations on options for closing that gap. Our next steps on the final page, page 7, we're asking that you accept the update, provide City Commission direction on priorities for balancing the fiscal year 23 budget, and we've identified some of those dates that are critical. July 1st, certified taxable property values will go out to the public, and we'll get a final number. July 13th, we'll bring back a third quarter update, as well as the proposed fiscal year 23 budget, and then we go through the adoption process on September 7th and September 21st. Thank you for that time.
Robert, there are a lot of people that are interested in the $1 million set aside specifically for gun violence. Is that in the proposed budget?
Yes, that is in the proposed budget. Yes.
So everyone that is here on that particular issue, that is in the proposed budget.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, with that, why don't we go ahead and open it up for public comment? Folks, if you are here to speak, we're going to give everybody the opportunity to speak. You can turn in your speaker card to Mr. Cook or right over here.
Probably easier to do it right here at the entrance, and he can gather up and bring them to me as we get them.
Sounds great. And we will just keep calling everybody up. Come to the podium right here. Robert, if you could close those blinds. We got a bad glare coming off the car out there. Thank you. Just come on up, 3 minutes, name and address for the record, and the clerk will tell you when you're down to about 30 seconds, and let's have a great public hearing. With that, Mr. Clerk, how many public comments do we have this evening?
But between 20 and 25 at this point, Mayor.
Excellent.
The first of which is Lauren Perlman, followed by Kaylee Murdoch.
Excellent.
Lauren Perlman is our first speaker.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Good afternoon. Lauren Perlman, 6349 Fitz Lane, Tallahassee, Florida 32311. Thank you. And good evening, City Commissioner, Mayor, and Commissioners. I'm here again for Tallahassee Animal Services. Appreciate the time. I'll be brief. I spoke last time about the need there. These positions, while they are looking like additional positions, again, they are replacing temporary and OPS positions where they cannot keep staff employed there. I would like to, I know many of you have been out there and have taken a tour out there, but I would invite each one of you to come out for a few hours, even a work day. Don't just take this ask from me, from the others that you're going to hear from, and from the staff. You will really see the work that goes on there, the need that they have to support the animals and the public for this great service that you do. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Kaylee Murdoch, followed by Kathleen Brennan.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Hi, Kaylee Murdoch, 158 Parkbrook Circle. I'm speaking like last time in support of the additional positions requested for the Animal Service Center, like Lauren just did. I want to encourage you to think about the shelter provides support for the community's animals, yes, but think of the variety of people problems that the shelter works to improve as well, including public safety. People often assume that animal sheltering is an animal issue, which it is, but it's also a people issue. You might think about the stray dogs in your community, the litter of kittens you find on the way to work one morning, or even a situation where a family is looking to find a place for their animal that they're having to part from. Because we have an incredible shelter in our community, we're lucky to be able to have answers to those problems. And we're also lucky at the shelter to have an incredible volunteer program and a great team of staff that's doing the best that they can for the community and our animals, but we need more support. Shelters across the country are dealing with increased intakes and longer stays for animals that come into the shelter, and this is resulting in an increased need for time, care, and effort beyond what the current positions can provide. This is something that I've seen firsthand as a volunteer and community member, and I strongly support funding these positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Kathleen Brennan. Following Kathleen Brennan will be Robin Hassler-Thompson.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Kathleen Brennan. My address is 4778 Lancashire Lane, Tallahassee, Florida, 32309. Hello, I'm here today as the president of the Oasis Center, and I'm urging you to consider the request for the CSWG, the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls 2.0 reimagining. This is a way to also reduce violence among our youth, as many of the homicides are committed by children of single mothers. And our focus has always been to improve the lives of women and girls in this committee, in this town. And the commission has been working since 2011 to do so, and frankly, they need more resources. So I urge you to vote for that increased funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Robin Hassler-Thompson. Then next will be Claude Hendon.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Hassler-Thompson, and my address is 851 East Park Avenue. That's the address of our agency. I didn't know I'd be following Kathleen, and let me just vote, or encourage you also to vote in favor of increased funding for the Commission on the Status of the Women and Girls. I had the honor of chairing that body a number of years ago, as you know, Mr. Mayor. I'm here, though, to tell you about STAC and the funding that we're requesting from you for educational and promotional activities related to the business community. The business community in our area really are the eyes and ears on the ground that can be able to detect whether human trafficking is going on. Last year, the county funded STAC to develop a training. It's called stacpro.org, and we've been able to develop a strong training that will spread the word that indeed human trafficking is taking place here in our area, unfortunately, both sex and labor trafficking. Our agency is here to provide direct aid to victims of human trafficking, as well as to do this kind of thing, human trafficking education. A lot of times people think trafficking only does happen in the large metropolitan areas, but indeed it's here. It's ongoing, and this training has been designed to inform the public, to inform businesses so they can be smarter about the issues of trafficking, they don't sometimes realize that if they don't know it's taking place on their premises, they can be liable criminally, civilly, and in other ways. They can endanger others at their workplaces. And if they do the right thing, then they have safer and more sustainable businesses. We also know that as the eyes and ears on the ground, that businesses can be the ones to identify trafficking situations and help bring traffickers to justice. So for that, we're looking for support from the city. I think this is the second or third time I've talked to you all, so this is probably old news, but just to let you know that we're still here, hoping that the city will join in the county's efforts for one more year. After that, STAC will absorb the cost of sustaining this effort, but we really do need the support of the city to move forward. So if there are any questions, I'd be delighted. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Claude Hendon, and then Kate McFall.
Thank you so much for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Claude Hendon, 4778 Lancashire Lane, Tallahassee. I'm here to speak on the budget item for the Commission on Status for Women and Girls. I know you all took some great action with the sheriff's help with the status of on the Commission of Men and Boys, I think the thing to me is that those two have to work together. Obviously, all boys have a mom, and so if you help that commission on the women, then I think it's going to pay off. And I think you gave the boys a little bit more money. If you give the girls a little more money, that'd be great. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker.
Kate McFall, followed by Kathleen Spehar.
Excellent. Your name and address for the record.
Hi there. Good evening. Kate McFall. My address is 1206 Walton Drive, 32312. Thank you so much. This is a neat venue and different, and I'm back to talk about the same thing. I'll be brief, of course, but I'm here in support of the funding for animal services, and it's really just to transition many of the positions to full-time because they're struggling to retain staff without, the benefits that come with a full-time position. It's hard. Everyone knows that. This climate, it's hard to hire, recruit, all those things, but there are real four-legged lives that are depending on the great staff and the volunteers. I talked about at the last meeting, the volunteer hours are off the charts, like insane number of hours that our volunteers are pulling their weight, absolutely. And we think that, these conversion of these positions to full-time is a reasonable ask. I know you guys have tough jobs, but one other thing I wanted to point out, where there are people, there are pets, always. We know that. They're always intertwined, and there's a reason it's called animal services. As Kaylee mentioned, it's because of the services they provide for the animals, but also for the people. Commissioner Williams-Cox was kind enough to post a picture of a dog that was lost the other day. That happens every day, all the time. The staff is on it. They work on this all the time. Today, while I was at the shelter, someone brought in a kitten that she found at her job site, and this is constant. These people are always on it. There's so many services that are provided to all of us in our community. So we are very grateful for their hard work and support their efforts, and hope you will as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Kathleen Spehar, and then Mary Dreschler.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Kathleen Spehar, 2414 Dozier Drive, 32301. Mayor, commissioners, thank you so much for this time with you today. I'm grateful to be here on behalf of Arts, Culture, History, and Heritage, and I really appreciate the time that we've spent discussing that and the value of arts and culture to you. I know it was really strong. In the room, too, I think that you'll see that there's also support for arts and culture. If you are from an arts agency, if you're an artist, if you have been impacted by art at all in your life, could you please raise your hand? Please raise your hand. Thank you. So you can see, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about impact here. We know that there's very difficult decisions to be made about the budget, and we don't take that lightly. We don't take our ask lightly, but we want to make sure that you understand that this investment is going to help create a runway of unrestricted support for local programs to take off. Programs for our families, programs for our kids, for our neighbors, for loved ones with special needs and economic challenges, These programs include youth programs that will engage students in neighborhoods, out on stage and dance in the dance studio like Young Actors Theater and Tallahassee Ballet, or programs to engage arts or adults with autism, like Motivating People Through Arts and Crafts offer, or music camps in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods the Tallahassee Youth Orchestra and student offer, and student art workshops like Cool Breeze Art and Smooth Jazz Festival offer. All these unrestricted funds will not only create a runway to increase, thank you, increase access and inclusion, my tech support is right here, also offers a way for COCA to seek increased funds to match the unrestricted funding from outside the city and county. So that runway that you will build will help allow us and many organizations that are here with local facing programs to take off and to fly high. So please help us assist these organizations and these programs for our entire community relies on by approving the $300,000 request for COCA. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next is Mary Deschler, who will be followed by Kelly Oddie.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary, and I live at 1339 Hancock Street. And I was here last time as CSWG program coordinator, and I just wanted to remind you how much of an impact this can have for the CSWG. Currently, I work part-time, and really big changes can happen when you employ a full-time person, whether that's going to be the executive director or just upping the hours of the next person who comes behind me. You automatically open up the playing field to more than just college students or graduate students who have previously filled this role, and that means not only can they keep the role longer, but they also create sustaining relationships with each and every one of you and then everyone else in the community. So I just wanted to remind you of that and ask you to support it once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Kelly Oddie, then Chris Gorsuch.
Great to see you. Your name and address.
Great to see you too. Kelly Oddie, 317 East Call Street. Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for giving me an opportunity to come tonight. I just want to urge you to include the request for the CSWG 2.0, as we call it, in the budget for next year. As you know, the CSWG has been in operation for 10 years, and we have an extraordinary record. They do have an extraordinary record of service to the community. It's really important that people understand that the CSWG is your committee. We're a committee to the City Commission, and we're a committee to the County Commission. So we're ineligible. The CSWG is ineligible for any other local funding. Measuring equity is incredibly hard to do, but I think it's really important that you be able to say, here is where the public dollars are going. And this opportunity actually enables us to create a women and girls wellness indicator that will allow us to create an algorithm to measure the quality of women and girls' lives in Tallahassee over a period of time. And I think that that's incredibly important so that you know that your money is being invested wisely. We have 10 years of being in operation, and we have a ton of research that's been done, but we're really stalled in getting those things to action. And so what's really important for the commission is that it have a full-time leadership position, somebody that can really exponentially make sure that the outcome, what you all expect from the commission, actually makes significant changes for the community. This proposal quadruples the amount of engagement of both former commissioners of the CSWG, current volunteers from the community, and anyone else that wants to be involved. And right now we don't have the ability to do that because we do not have the staff that can handle that kind of a workload. So I think what you'll see is that it's not just that we have a full-time position and we're able to double the work. I think it'll be more like quadruple the work because it'll be able to bring in more people to doing it. So thank you very much, and I really urge you to include it in the budget.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Chris Gorsuch, followed by Janet Pichard.
Great. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I am speaking in favor of the COCA funding. I am a member of COCA in that I'm one of the many arts organizations in this town that rely on the support of COCA. I'm with the Tallahassee Civic Chorale. Our budget is less than $50,000, yet we are able to do 3 concerts and 6 presentations at assisted living centers throughout the area. I just want to say that we are not a tourist draw, let's face it. But with the pandemic, through the use of live stream and other technology, we have been able to extend the reach to around the area and to help people who are otherwise unable to attend our concerts to hear them. I will just wrap this up by saying that we are very dependent on this. COCA provides support for us where we are not able to afford a staff and the wherewithal necessary in order to fund some of our other things. Tourism dollars are good. I am certainly grateful that we have them, but tax dollars represent a reinvestment in the community to the citizens who have already made the commitment to live here. And so I end by urging you to approve the $300,000 necessary to have COCA. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
That is Janet Pichard, followed by Gwendolyn Singleton.
Your name and address for the record.
Janet Pichard, 2226 Victory Garden Lane, Tallahassee, Florida, 32301. I am here in support of the COCA funding. Many of you probably know me from not long ago when you built the police station and we had to move on. So we're hanging in there. We're doing okay. I don't know how many of you know, I'm assuming you know that most of the funding we get through our grant program right now with COCA is for tourism dollars. Okay, so in the past, both the county helped and the city helped, and obviously that has changed some. But the city's money that we used in the past was for our educational programs. The Tallahassee Ballet does a lot of educational programs, particularly for underserved, economically disadvantaged, and persons of color or young students. And we really try to get them involved in the arts, and we're actually turning some corners. From the pandemic, we did a little bit on virtual, but now we're back to about 10 schools. With that said, we really need the support so far as the financing of the education programs, because right now all of that comes out of our operating budget. And we want to do that, and we want to continue that. But to be able to do what we do and also increase our servings of the area, we need some help in the education department. So I hope you will consider the funding for COCA request. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next speaker is Gwendolyn Singleton, followed by Gabrielle Simpson.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Senior Manager, Commissioners, esteemed panel, community. My name is Gwendolyn Singleton, 2740 Everett Lane, Tallahassee, 32308. I'm grateful for the opportunity to stand in support of the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls funding. Since its inception, the CSWG has been engaged in ongoing activities to improve the lives of women and girls in our community. This funding will assist the CSWG in enhancing its structure as well as its operations, centered on a strategic focus as well as aligned with the city and county priorities, as well as national standards on overall wellness and health. So as you see, this is something that's critically important for the health and wellness for women and girls in our community. And as stated, every woman and girl is connected to the entire community, so it's not just for women and girls. The approval will also facilitate the extension of the CSWG's collaborative efforts to increase awareness about the issues impacting women and girls in our community, as well as to increase the resources, as well as the ability to advocate for women and girls in our community. And this, of course, fosters additional programs and efforts that will assist the women and girls in our community. Also, the funding will better position the CSWG to provide community-informed as well as data-informed recommendations to the city and county in our efforts to move the needle to increase equity as well as improve the overall well-being and quality of life of women and girls in our community. And while we recognize and acknowledge that there have been some improvements over the years, and we do greatly appreciate all of your support and your efforts in previous years, we also recognize that significantly more work is needed in order to decrease the disparities in access, as well as the disparities in social, economic, educational, and health outcomes for women and girls in our community. So approving the CSWG 2.0 budget request will be a very important step in this critical effort to continue this work. And this work, I'm sure, as I mentioned earlier, will positively impact the lives of women and girls, but not just women and girls, our community, Tallahassee, Leon County as a whole. So I urge you to approve this budget, the extension for the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. Thank you so much for your time and attention and for your continued support of the CSWG.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next is Gabrielle Simpson, followed by Brad Grant.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle Simpson. I live at 1908 Botany Drive, 32303, and I am here to speak for COCA funding. I'm a board member at 621 Gallery, and I want to talk to you guys about how important art is for the community. Tourism is great, but I care more about our community and what the people that are paying these tax dollars get to experience. I recently graduated from FSU about a year ago, so I'm not very high on the pay scale, so I can't really go to other places and do touristy things and go to art galleries there. But what I can do is I can go to 61 Gallery every month at First Friday, and I can see artists who are both international and from our very own community. COCA, through all of their other arts programs with their teaching and education, it's a great way to just bring beauty and art into our community and let people express themselves and see things that they otherwise would never be able to. So I just really hope that you guys will consider giving more funding to that so that we can continue to uplift our local artists and bring in other artists so that they can be shared as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Is Brad Grant, and then we'll hear from Claudia Blackburn.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
How you doing? My name is Brad Grant, and I'm at 2529 South Adams Street. I have a car wash in Piggly parking lot, and I'm here on behalf of not only me, but my workers. I have 25 workers who were actually working for me, but they're trying to shut us down inside of Piggly parking lot. I could have just went on and shut down, but one of my workers came to me. She said, what do I do from here? So it made me to come to make a stand for my workers because I have 25 workers going to be unemployed. I feel like weeds there are like a tree. So I'm feeding more than the 25 workers, and then some of them have kids. I have 5 workers who sleep in my van every night in Piggly parking lot. So I asked them, I said, well, why don't y'all just go ahead and go somewhere else and work at a different car wash, but they don't want to leave. But I wanted to give a thanks to Mary at Governor Square Mall, and she heard my call that we'll be transitioning to Governor Square Mall. And it's so hard for them to be able to regroup to go all the way from Governor Square Mall from the south side. So I'm just asking for the sake of my workers, because some of them don't even have a meal, so I have to pay them by daily. So I'm just asking, can I get an extra helping hand? Because y'all don't see what I see in that parking lot, because I'm open 7 days a week. And most of my workers is older than me, and they respect me because God gave me that ability to better to be over them. So I feel like on the south side, I need to be there on the south side, because where's they gonna go? They can't even eat unless they come and do a cart. I know we have other places, they could go into the shelter and things like that, but they don't want to go there because they don't want to leave the car wash, and I thank God for that. So I'm just asking, for the sake of my workers, they don't even have, they won't even have a way of transportation to even make it to the Governor Square Mall. So I just ask, you know what I mean, can y'all just be thankful of my workers? And I want to thank Diane and Mr. Day that I have met you, and Bill Proctor and yes, Bill Proctor and Mr. Daly. So Mr. Sims, I never speak in front of a large crowd before, but I'm not only speaking for myself, I'm speaking for my workers, because God has sustained me. I could count kind of well now. So, but I want to make sure my workers are better to count well too. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. The next speaker
is Claudia Blackburn. She'll be followed by Terry Galloway.
Claudia, it's so great to see you.
It's great to see you too.
Are you fully retired now, Claudia?
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Doing a little
Hey,
consulting.
As the public health officer of Leon County retired, thank you so much for all that you did during COVID, and we certainly appreciate it.
Well, you are very welcome. So I'm here today as Claudia Blackburn, 2923 Shearer Road, Tallahassee, 32312. And I'm here as a public health professional, but also as a member of Temple Israel and the Capital Area Justice Ministry. And I'm here really just to thank you for putting the $1 million a year for 5 years for an evidence-based gun violence interruption program into the budget. This is so critical, and I just want to tell you how much we appreciate it and urge you to stay the course because things come up. So I just really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next is Terry Galloway, and then we'll hear from Kathy Drake.
Great.
Very good start.
Thanks for joining us, Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Galloway, and I live at 1402 South Meridian, and I'm here, of course, to support COCA because I love them, and they support local arts organizations like mine, the Mickey Faust Club. That's very weird, but we work for the local people. But I also wanted to. And it is every single organization. I'm so incredibly moved by hearing what other people have to say. The ACES, the thing about sex trafficking, the health things, the animal shelters, those are all things that I think if our city supported them, that's the kind of thing that would make me want to live in the city because these are the most worthy causes imaginable. And I'm sitting there being so moved. And I'm also being very moved by the artists who are here because, again, it's wonderful, great, the tourists, it'll attract tourists, but those kinds of things are the things that make people want to live here, because it's for people who live here. And my little organization, we have a lot of LGBT people, we have a lot of people with disabilities, they call themselves Crips with Attitude, and I'm gonna tell you the LGBT people, when the Supreme Court said they could marry, they came to Mickey Faust to celebrate. When the people were killed at Pulse, they came to Mickey Faust to mourn. When we have Disability Month, we have a whole bunch of Crips with Attitude that just converge upon Mickey Faust to celebrate, to do these things. This is local stuff. I want to thank you guys for living in this city with me. Thank you very much. And I hope you'll find it in your heart and your budget to support every single cause in this room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kathy Drake, and followed by Marty Chumbler.
Your name and address for the record.
That was a hard act to follow. Yeah. Kathy Drake, 2044 Thomasville Road, 32308. And I am coming from CAJM, Capital Area Justice Ministry as well. And, again, to thank you all for your support and wanting to, and committing to this $1 million and over the next 5 years of coming up with a gun violence interruption program. As a retired teacher, in seeing the news lately, just breaks my heart, and hoping that we're not gonna ever have that here in our community. But of course, we know we have a gun problem in this city, and we need a well-funded program. So I just hope that as we move forward, that you will work with us to kind of, because we've done a ton of research on all the different programs that are out there, and we just want to make sure that we're going to be working with you in coming up with the best program that fits Tallahassee and what we need here in our area. A multifaceted approach, you know, that deals with counseling, and education and conflict resolution and all of those things, and that it's well-funded with a strong core group that can coordinate all of that and make sure that it's working, because that's a lot of money. We want to make sure it's worked well and used well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker
is Marty Chumbler, and she'll be followed by Doug Hahn.
Good evening. I'm Marty Chumbler. My address is 4023 Roscaria Drive. I'm also with the Capital Area Justice Ministry, and as Kathy just did, I want to thank you for your support, $1 million per year for 5 years for gun violence abatement. We've been lucky that other than the yoga studio, we've not had a mass shooting in Tallahassee, but we have gun violence, as we all know, every single day, and we need to do something about it. And I would urge that in addition to your support of the $1 million, that a significant portion of those funds be used to engage with one of the several good evidence-based proven gun violence abatement programs that are out there in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Doug Hahn, and the next speaker after that will be Barbara Davis.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Hahn, 2076 West Forest Drive, Tallahassee. I'm here as a voter and a taxpayer, and I am here to speak on the economic impact of gun violence, which affects our budgeting. As you know, as of the start of this month, we've had 56 shootings in Tallahassee, as opposed to only 75, well, not only 75, but that's in comparison to 75 of all of last year. It's a pandemic that's increasing. We've gone from 12 deaths so far this year to 16 compared to last year. So we're going to exceed that. The economic impact of gun violence is horrific. The American Academy for Family Practitioners estimates that it costs $233 billion every year. My organization, the Every Town for Gun Safety, estimates that $280 billion. Today, unfortunately, we had another shooting in Tallahassee. Only looking at the 3 family members that were shot, not the shooter, not our fallen officer. We can plug those numbers in for Florida. Typically for Florida, today's shooting cost Florida $893,175. To the taxpayers, it costs $127,587. Those are verifiable numbers. They're typical, not exact. There are cost-effective programs with proven results. I will mention a few. There's Connection First that works with reparative justice. There's, of course, the Tallahassee Emergency Assistance Mobile Unit that will send professional mental health workers and social workers on nonviolent 911 calls. There's the Big Ben After Reentry program that works with reintegrating formerly incarcerated persons by working with the business community. There are smaller boots on the ground type organizations like what was called the Peacemakers that died from lack of funding. We can refund that. They're now the Building Restorative Collective, working through the South City Foundation. But again, there are other ways that we can fight gun violence that don't cost money. I'm a member of Moms Demand Action, and I'm also a member of the Capital Area Justice Ministry. And there is the Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. These are all educational advocacy groups.
You have about 30 seconds.
Okay. Again, I wanted to thank the commissioners. I wanted to thank you specifically for the money, because we can prove that bread cast upon the water comes back sevenfold. These programs will pay for themselves and reduce your budget. But I also want to thank you for the initiative to, before the Supreme Court at Florida tomorrow, to again fight against the horrible state law we have to for preemptive gun restrictions. We need to fight this on a local level. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Barbara Davis, followed by Connell Leonard.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Barbara Davis. I live at 3212 Whitney Drive East, zip code 32309. As has been said by just about everybody here, I believe in every one of these proposals. I support them all. But I'm just here today as an art teacher in Tallahassee to speak on behalf of COCA. I just finished my 20th year teaching high school art at Florida High. And I have many, many friends who are art teachers in Leon County. I know the high school art teachers at all the local high schools. Some of them were interns that served under me years ago. Some are new and younger, but as I said, I know many, many of them. And the budgets that they often receive are very low in relation, especially to the numbers of students they have. I have one friend who 2 years ago left Whittaker to come to Florida High to teach, but when she left Whittaker, her annual budget was $400 for over 400 students, $400 for the entire year. That's $1 per student. And you want to do more than, paper and crayons, and they do. The art teachers in town do amazing things, and Leon County has supported them very well. All the elementary schools have kilns, et cetera, but art supplies cost money. And I can tell you, having purchased clay and glass and sculpture materials for 20 years, this inflation that we're all experiencing, for the first time I see an appreciable increase in what my materials cost this year, if you could even get them. Many clays and glazes are unavailable and on back order going back over a year. Anyway, COCA has been such a friend to the arts, to all of the arts and artists and the community for many years. And as a teacher, I can say that along with the programs they do, such as Winterfest and exhibits like that, one of the things they do is a very simple grant process that a very simple RFP that they put out that's easy for teachers to fill out. It is not difficult. I think the cap is $500, but I've done written a few of them for $350. You can imagine if your budget as an elementary teacher is $400 a year and you can get a $400 or $500 grant from COCA, that's like manna from heaven. And I know our school has done some great projects with these grants over the years, and I have friends who taught at Pineview.
You have about 15 seconds.
Thanks. Well, they just did great things like the music teacher and the art teacher getting together and coming up with a big program that goes above and beyond the day-to-day art that they can do. So COCA has always been a friend to art teachers in town, and I just want to thank them and thank you for your time.
Thank you. If I could brag on your institution real quick before you leave for a very unique story that I know that Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner Williams-Cox also appreciate. A couple of weeks ago at the second inaugural Soul of the Southside Festival, almost got rained out for an outdoor concert. And if it wasn't for Dr. Chambers and the wonderful family at FSUS, rowing opened the doors literally with hours to spare, completely moving a festival from outside of Anita Favors Park to your new Performing Arts Center on campus. Just no questions asked. Saved the Saturday night concert where thousands of individuals came and had a wonderful time. Please pass on a huge thank you to FSUS and to Dr. Chambers.
I will. Thank you. That building is for the community, not just the school. It's for everyone. Thank you.
It is. Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Connell Leonard, followed by Stanley Sims.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Elder Connell Leonard, 1240 Dickers Lane, Tallahassee, Florida. And I'm here also on behalf of the Capital Area Justice Ministry, and also been a part of the gun violence research team. I heard the ministers from the different families and different people from the different community and how they're dealing with the sorrows of the loss of their loved one. I'm gonna just change my story and just say thank you. You made it perfectly clear that the $1 million will go toward gun violence and finding an interruption program that fits Tallahassee. So once again, I say thank you for keeping your commitment to all the commissioners, and please stay at the course.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Stanley Sims, who will be followed by James Armistead.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm having one of the bad back spasms right now. Woo!
Woo.
You want to sit down for a second and come back?
Oh, I'm scared, Mayor. Let me just go where I'm going. But let me tell you, Mr. Mayor, I walked out the door about 5 minutes ago and I saw the most beautiful thing in the world. I saw response to a cry. That black man came up here. I said he black because it's got to be emphasized. Because black business right now during this pandemic, we are struggling. And we are being offered loans. And big businesses are being given grants. This man clean cars, employs other people that no one else would hire. Don't give a time of day. And when I walked out that door, Karen, where are you? And I saw Karen, and I'm not being disrespectful because I can't say your last name. Not that I can say Karen too good either. But when I saw Karen and 2 or 3 of their staff standing around that man making a plan, and I ain't want to mess it up because I tend to mess up stuff. But she welcomed me into the dialogue. That's customer service, people. That's a Tallahassee proud moment. I don't know what tomorrow may bring for me. I just said I live on 1320 Avondale Way, and it's not the best of homes, but it's way better than these people that work for that man. And whether you give me money or not, I'm gonna fight. Because this is a fight worth fighting. And Karen, you gave me hope out of a mountain of despair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
James Armstead, and then Ian Waldick.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is James P. Armstead, Jr., 2733 Boswood Lane, Tallahassee, Florida, 32305. I'm a member of the Capital Area, Justice Ministry, and I was at a meeting on April 5th, 2022, when y'all committed to put $1 million a year for 5 years toward gun violence interruption. And I'm just so proud y'all did that. I'm that y'all committed to that, and I support y'all in that commitment. And our communities are crying out, and we need to stop the gun violence. And I thank y'all for y'all commitment.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Ian Waldick, then Josh Johnson. Mayor, as he approaches, I'll say that after that will be Donna Pearl Cotterill, and anyone else who wishes to speak, please fill out a speaker card, and we'll take you following those individuals.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ian Waldick, 2347 Garland Court. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, thank you for being here and taking our comments tonight. I'm here before you tonight on behalf of St. Francis Wildlife Association. I'm the treasurer of the board of directors. I'm here just to ask, we've made the same request for $30,000 of funding for the past several years. We just ask that the city include that in the budget. We've been doing good work around the city and the county for decades now. Certainly everybody in the room has heard of St. Francis. A lot of folks here have personal stories about how St. Francis has interacted with them and touched their lives. So we just ask to be able to continue doing the good work that we're doing those funds are really necessary for us in order to continue our mission here. So thank you for your time today, and we hope that you include us in the budget. Thank you.
Our next speaker, please.
Josh Johnson, and then Donna Pearl Cotterell.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Josh Johnson, 1406 Hay Street. Today, I won't hold you long. I'm just here to speak in support of the arts. I am the president, fortunate enough to be the president of the 621 Art Gallery, and I have seen, okay, I'm sorry, sometimes height isn't a good thing. I have been fortunate enough to be the president of the 621 Gallery, and I have seen the work that this community is able to do when we fund it. So I need you guys on a couple of different levels. I need you to fund it, but I also need it because if I can no longer be the art guy, I can't justify this haircut. So I need you guys, okay? So please fund the arts, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Donna Pearl Cotterell.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Donna Pearl Cotterell. I live right here in the Bond community. And I'm going to state the obvious. And if I offend anyone, I apologize. But there were only two people of color, two Black people, who spoke for the arts. Arts and arts funding in Tallahassee is very white. We have a problem with gun violence. Children who look like me, if they had art-based programs in their community, may not be out committing crimes. I was a 13-year-old girl who was experimenting with everything. But at 15, I was introduced to theater and grateful for it because out of 7 children, I was the only one that went to college and now have 2 master's degrees. So if we're gonna fund the arts and we also want to combat crime and violence in our community, we can do both with the arts, but we've got to do it in the Black community too, so that our children have a future. So I ask you, when you think about the budget, and no one likes a deficit spend, but invest in the arts in the Black community, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is McLean Harden, followed by Whitefield Leland.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Hi there. Thank you so much for your time. McLean Harden, 2692 Fairmount Lane, 32308. I'm here today on behalf of the Tallahassee Community Chorus in support of COCA. I do want to assure you that live performing arts and live arts and culture in person is thriving. We're coming back despite all the challenges of the pandemic. And really, we've seen in my organization how meaningful it's been to come back in person and sing together after so much time apart. I think I have a pretty common story. I came to Tallahassee in 2018 to do my master's degree at FSU with every intention on leaving as soon as I had that degree in hand. But I was greeted here with open arms and love by COCA, by my chorus, and I fell in love with the city. My husband and I bought our first home here, and we want to start our family here in Tallahassee. And that's just one story of the impact of arts and culture and how it brings people to Tallahassee and keeps people here. So I hope you'll support their budget request today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker, please.
Next speaker, and the last speaker for which I have a card at this time, is Whitefield Leland.
Great. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. Whitefield Leland, 754 West 7th Avenue. First, I would like to speak on behalf of the arts funding. I was in a seminar yesterday, and I listened to Principal Benny Bolden, and he told us about his life story. And, you know, he was a troubled kid at youth, but then he found band, he found art, and it changed his life. So that gave me a totally different look on arts and culture in my community. And when I heard that yesterday, it made me look around my community, and I was like, well, where are the arts and where are the bands? You know, where's that? So I encourage y'all to fund arts and cultures and be equal about it. Secondly, I'm 42 years old, and all my life, I was born and raised here. All my life, I've been fighting drugs and guns. All my life. I've been surrounded by drugs and guns all my life. I commend y'all for setting aside $1 million for the next 5 years, but what I don't commend is y'all don't telling us what y'all gonna do with it. That's what I don't commend. At the end of the day, I don't want it to be another situation as the Doak Campbell. We set aside this before, and this is what we're doing with it now. And when we came to the time of the situation, the whole community didn't feel like that money should have went that way, but because we set it aside, everybody went with it. So we setting aside money, let's say what we're gonna do with it. You know, let's give the community an idea where $5 million finna go, because from what I'm hearing on the community, we thinking about beefing up the police force, and that ain't gonna stop gun violence or drugs. So that's what I got to say. Thank y'all.
Mayor, that's the last speaker I have.
Okay. Anybody else here that has not had an opportunity to speak that would like to speak in the public hearing? Anybody else? Okay, we'll end the public comment and open it up for direction. All right, so colleagues, this is the next step in the budget process. The recommended option is to accept the update and to continue the discussion and provide direction. We had great public testimony tonight, so let's open it up. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a few questions about the recommended cuts. I was wondering if someone could speak to what alternatives we considered. You know, I know the 10% reduction in road resurfacing, the 20% reduction in sidewalk expenditures. I was wondering if we considered where else we looked and why we landed on those recommendations.
Robert, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Annually, as we go through the budget process, we look at what the strategic plan requirements are. Thanks. We look at what staffing levels we need to fund. And load those into the budget along with estimates of, thank you, along with estimates on fringe benefits, healthcare rates, and then in the general fund, we carry forward the operating expenses to be the same as last year. That then gives us what our target is expenditure-wise to compare against our revenue sources. As we go through the process of evaluating those operating expenses, we look across all 14 funds to say, are there any ways that we can do contractual services in a more effective or responsible manner? Centralizing purchasing, combining contracts. And so that's why we go through a frequent RFP and a bid award process. We go through policies of what equipment and materials the different entities need. And so we're essentially going through a budget-based process. So we're confident that what we presented is a responsible budget. Our avenue for being able to reduce expenditures then is looking to see where we invest. We don't want to sacrifice employee raises. We don't want to impact operations among the 14 operating funds. So our biggest investment after that, we also don't want to reduce human service investment. Our biggest then area where we can make an impact is making decisions in how much we do in maintenance and repair of roads and streets. And so that's how we arrived at that conclusion of making those recommendations.
Thank you. I asked this question in an email to the city manager, but for the public's benefit and just if you could elaborate, we have allocated $7 million in ARPA funds for fiscal year 24 and $4 million in ARPA funds for fiscal year 23. Could you talk me through whether it is something to consider that we use more ARPA funds for fiscal year 23 to cover some of these expenses? And of course, I understand, the need is still there in fiscal year 24, and we approved that ARPA budget, but I'm wondering if you could talk me through that.
No, absolutely. That's a great observation. We brought to the City Commission a plan for the ARPA funds for this $46 million, and one of the priorities you directed us to make sure that we were taking into consideration the economic impact. And so immediately we set aside an amount for local programs, human service programs, and housing and homelessness. We then took the balance of that economic impact and identified then the lost revenues that we could accrue. Now, those lost revenues far outpaced the $46 million that we received, minus the amount that we dedicated to the human service. Your question then is, we modeled that over the 4 years to say, here's how we think we would best close the gap for lost revenue based on the Treasury calculations, and that's why we arrived at $4 million in fiscal year 23, $7 million in fiscal year 24. Now, at your discretion and direction, we can bring back other recommendations for how we identify those lost revenues and use those lost revenues. As you observed, what that doesn't change then is that we then have to take some additional steps to identify expenditure savings in the out years where we see that gap continuing.
Thank you. And just a few more questions, and some of these may be best for Mr. City Manager to answer. You know, some of these funding requests are also jointly funded by the county, and I know they're still working on their budget. And I know that we can't tell the future of what they're going to decide, but I mean, I assume we're having those ongoing are we having those conversations with the county?
Yes, as an interlocal agreement, for example, the Animal Service Center budget is prepared by the city. We communicate what that budget is. If it increases by more than 4%, then we have to put them on notice. We did see a 3.5 to 3.7% change before the request for the additional positions and the move from OPS positions to full-time positions. So since that time, we have let the county know that there has been a request of us that it does increase what the budget would be beyond that 4%. We have not gotten feedback from them of what their decisions would be. They will be preparing a proposed budget for July 21st, and so we expect between then and now we would speak again.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the timeline moving forward, and you know, the very good news that the property appraisers, you know, that we're expecting almost 2 million more than we were expecting in revenue. When will we have the final estimate for the projected revenue?
Yeah, July 1st is when we get the certified taxable property values.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned that as when the trim notices went out. Those go out between now and July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll get that certified taxable property value.
And okay, so I'm wrapping up here. So, and I'm not asking you to do the math. I did some math. So basically, what we're talking about, and some of this is, you know, for the benefit of the public who are here too. So we started out with about a $4 million deficit at our last budget workshop. With some cuts, we're at $619,000 deficit. And basically, if we fund everything today, it's about $2 million of a deficit.
A couple points of clarity.
Sure.
Part of the $4 million reduction was the $2 million in ad valorem revenue. The proposals for reducing streets and sidewalk construction then brings that total down to $619,000. We're estimating with the additional requests that have been made and discussed here, and that doesn't include the human trafficking.
Right, that's an additional
request. That would be about a $1.5 million deficit rather than $2 million.
Okay, and do you have any information or any sense of whether we should expect any more revenue surprises, good or bad? I know the time frame is closing in. I'm just curious.
We will get reports from the state on
Right.
sales tax, gas tax, and again, that would happen in the early July timeframe. I would be pleased if those came back more positively, and of course, that would be included in the July 13th proposed budget.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
May I ask,
Manager.
Robert, if you'll clarify, we don't yet know what the CRA portion is. We've estimated. If you could kind of describe how that works. We've got an estimate. We don't know that, but there's some potential estimating risk there.
Sure, absolutely. When we got our estimated value at about $14 billion, that includes the 2 CRAs. So when we estimated what our and saw that growth was 9.2%, we know that some of that will accrue to the CRAs, the Frenchtown and the Southside CRAs. But we don't know what their growth is in their assessed value. We won't get that until we get the final certified value. So we have modeled that in order to estimate that, but again, that's a great observation. Is that still an unknown?
Okay.
If they saw that 9% growth, that would be beyond what we've seen before, which we would then need to transfer that amount to those
Okay,
CRAs.
meaning we don't know what they get and what we keep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and now I just want to touch very briefly on some of the requests. I think from, our last budget workshop, it seems like we're in agreement. We'd like to, see everything here funded. I would like to continue those conversations until those numbers are finalized with our revenue. As far as, some of these requests, have we had conversations about, have staff had conversations yet with specifically, adjusting any of these funding requests with COCA, with CSWG, with the animal shelter? And I don't mean any kind of like hard bargain negotiation, but just we haven't reached that point yet?
No, we really haven't had that opportunity since May 18th. We did put the county on notice that some of these requests may impact if there's cost-sharing arrangements. I think even today we got more details of what some of the requests were because we had been talking, for example, in COCA about the tourist development tax dollars. We're now hearing that really the request is for non-tourist development tax dollar support, and so that's new information. And no, we haven't talked to OASIS to see to Commission on Status of Women and Girls to see what other options they have.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to weigh in real quick before, and we'll give everybody the opportunity to speak, because I know everybody's sitting on pins and needles. Look, I love the ideas that are being proposed, and I don't think that we have to make major decisions tonight. I just checked in again with the city manager. And again, I think it's the opportunity that we need to keep moving towards our goal. Folks, this is my 16th budget cycle that I've been through on the local level. These things, as we get closer and closer, they seem to work themselves out one way or the other. And we're still operating off of assumptions, even though we're narrowing the assumptions. July 1st is when we get the actuals. This is when we know what we're dealing with, okay? Since we've had the May budget workshop till now, the future's looking brighter, as Commissioner Porter has already mentioned. Now, will we have enough revenue to do everything that we want? I don't know. It's a tall lift right there. Mr. Porter brought up some other options as well that we could take into consideration too in regards to the ARPA funding. But the bottom line is that I want to continue the conversation. I don't think that we should be in a position to say a hard no right now yet without knowing what the actuals are going to be. I think we are in a good position moving forward. In addition to this conversation, I think that we should continue the conversation of expanding the team and providing mental health services through 911 dispatch as well. So at the end of the day, let's have a great conversation. I think, and I think the manager would agree. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm looking at you for direction. That if we provide a motion to accept the report, continue the conversation as we get the actuals and the trim notices go out. We know specifically what we're dealing with coming July 1, that by the time we get to the July 21st budget workshop, we will have a great idea of what the county's proposed balanced budget will be. It'll provide much more insight on how we can work together with organizations with our proposed budget. And then that will be the meeting where the rubber hits the road, per se. Okay? So just wanted to, and we'll just move on down. So Mayor Pro Tem, yes, sir.
Thank you. Mayor, what I'd like to do is,
Curtis.
what I'd like to do is to kind of give the audience an indication of how we got to where we are in terms of our policies that we've adopted as a commission. And the first is, and I think, Mr. City Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, in the last 6 years, we have maintained a 4.1 millage rate. Last 6 years.
Yes, sir.
That's our taxing rate for the city of Tallahassee, which is one of the lowest in the state of Florida. Especially when you consider that 50% or better of our property in the city of Tallahassee, because we're a college town, we're a state government town, is off the tax roll. We got churches and other nonprofits that don't pay property taxes because of their status. And so we're constrained in that respect in terms of what, and you know, we've made the commitment not to raise taxes. That benefits each and every one of us who are here that are property owners in one way or the other, either a home or a business. That benefits us, that saves us annually. And then also we are required, I think somebody said early something about deficit spending. We can't deficit spend. By law, we have to provide a balanced budget at the end of the fiscal year. We can't deficit spend. We don't have any other way of generating revenue other than those sources that are already outlined, property taxes being the primary source. And so my issue is and all of the programs that have been spoken for here, I would love to fund them 110% if we could. But our responsibility is to provide for basic municipal services for the residents. And you know, we're already cutting back on sidewalk repairs. We had a case, I'm not gonna mention any names, but we had a case where an individual tripped on a sidewalk that had developed a place where they had come apart. The sidewalk had come apart. They tripped, sued the city. That was $150,000 that the city was financially liable for because of that sidewalk disrepair, okay? So we've got to repair those sidewalks where they need repairs. Streets, we just did a $3 million project on Benton Road to improve public safety along that corridor, both pedestrian and auto safety. I just want you all to understand the decisions that we have to make and how we prioritize the funding as we do. Robert has given an excellent presentation on how they've looked to where we can cut. I'm not saying a hard no tonight, but I want you all to understand how we have gotten to where we are now. I think all of us would agree that we would want to support Kate will tell you, I have a former neighbor, Leslie, and I won't call Leslie's last name, but Leslie is an ardent animal lover. And every time something goes on with animals, I'm getting a call from Leslie. And so I know I would, if I didn't support the animal shelter, I would get a call from Leslie, Kate. But all of the other programs as well. I am the City Commission's liaison to the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. So obviously, I support the mission of CSWG and want to see that funded, the arts funding that has been requested. So there's no question there. But when I think about what we are required to do as a city and the services and programs that we're required to provide for our citizens, that's going to be a priority for me. So as we go forward, you know that that's where my decision making is going to be made. Now, like I said, I'm not interested in saying a hard no tonight because things could change a little more as we get closer to that July 1 date, as you've heard. But we've got some tough decisions to make about funding basic human services and infrastructure needs in our community for all of the residents of the community. And so that's where my decision making will come down as we get closer to that July 1st date. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Mallow? We'll just go down the line, and then Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My position hasn't changed since our last meeting in July. I fully intend to support funding for COCA, funding for St. Francis, the animal shelter, and as well as the team's expansion that were identified earlier. I did have a few questions, Robert, just on the budget overall. And yes, just following up on Commissioner Porter's questions about other areas that we looked for reductions. Have we ever done, well, first, have we identified discretionary funding such as travel, food, those sorts of at a department level that could be reduced?
Absolutely. When we look at travel, most of the travel that we have looked at is related to training and certifications. And so a few years back, when we were going through the recession, 2008, 2009, one of the most immediate steps we took was to reduce travel and that training by 5% and 10% cuts. Those have not moved since that time, and yet that travel and training and those certifications have gotten more expensive. So we feel comfortable that there's not discretionary dollars that are in those trainings. Departments manage their budgets within those 5-2 accounts. They're have the discretion of making decisions between travel versus contract services, between materials and supplies, but have to stay within those budgets. And so we feel very confident that what we have budgeted is what they're able to manage. And it's exemplified by the fact that we haven't moved those dollars in the last 4 years. We've kept them exactly where they are. So we're comfortable that they're non-discretionary or there's not any opportunities there.
And have we ever gone through a zero-based budgeting strategy at a department level or a 5%, 10% reduction?
It's been a number of years since we've gone through a zero-based budgeting. I have to say that I did it for electric, and then when I came over to the budget office from electric, the exercise would zero out every line item and then ask everybody to build up back up to their budget of what was needed or necessary. Typically what would happen is you would go back through the contracts and the travel and the training and load those back into the budget. And in some cases, you'd come out at a number that was higher. It's an exercise that I know there are books written about it. I know that there's theories about it. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of energy, and it didn't really result in much value. What I did mention to Commissioner Porter was we like to look across the organization and say who has cell phones, and are all those the appropriate people that have cell phones, and do an audit from that perspective. What contracts are we awarding for lawn service or mowing or certain maintenance responsibilities, and can those be accumulated and then consolidated and managed centrally, so there's some savings. We did some exercises just 3 years ago with environmental services and facilities management, where we consolidated HVAC services because it was less expensive, and hired employees to be brought in to do the routine maintenance that we had contracted before. And so that's our approach to ensuring that our operating expenses are used responsibly.
Okay, thank you. And I think we're really close. You've done a great job so far in narrowing us down, getting to where we are. I think routinely throughout the year, we make adjustments within the $1 to $2 million range on different contracts, or we identify different things where we need to spend a little more or less. So I recognize we're right there to being able to accomplish, I think, everything the commission would like to accomplish for the year. I have full faith we can get there by July. And I got really loud. And in July. And I think we should look at dividing federal funding equally across 2 years if that's what's required to fund all of our priorities, given the discretion to identify other methods of savings across the budget as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And let me join my colleagues in saying that I do want to support these additional items. And I've enjoyed meeting with those of you who I've had an opportunity to meet with, and we talk about other potential dollars that are available in our community. For instance, Children's Services Council. They just made some awards for the summer. They'll be making some more in the fall. And as many of you know, I supported that. And I know that, as Donna Cotterill said, Arts for Children could help keep them away from guns. So I'm hoping that, Kathleen, when we talked about the possibility of maybe looking to Children's Services Council for some assistance in helping to find those unrestricted dollars. And for the Oasis Center and the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, I'm hoping that we can also find some dollars in the Children's Services Council from there as well. So I'm going to go ahead, because I know that they're probably watching and listening. I'm just go ahead on and say that we the city need their help in helping to meet these goals and make sure these things happen in our community. We've not had these funds from the Children's Services Council before. Now that they're here, we want to ask them to join this party and help us to fund these things in our community. And I think that the conversation does need to, and as well as for STAC. And I don't see Robin right now, but okay, Robin. That too, because trafficking does happen in Tallahassee. You may not want to believe it, but it does. And that's the line of work that I came from to the commission. And we need to help identify funding in the community as well as from the city to help make sure that businesses get trained to be able to recognize this societal ill and try to get this resolved. So I want to support all of these, but I also want others in our community to partner with us to help support these things, because we're all in this together. So I'm encouraging the Children's Services Council. I'm encouraging Leon County Schools. I'm encouraging Leon County. I'm encouraging the state government to help us meet these goals. I don't want to make the mistake, well, I think it was a mistake, I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but to fund raises and then cut Second Harvest. So now people got to buy food. So we want to make sure that we're working in concert, not in conflict. And what's happening here is that because the resources are so limited, we find ourselves being pitted against one another when we need to be working together. And in regards to another potential funding source, and I've been kind of, when I talk about this in our briefings about the $1 million for gun violence, I think we need to do the front end stuff so that we don't get the kids to the gun. Let's do some preventive work up front so that, and some of those dollars could possibly be used to help offset that, so that, because I'm told 80%, I got this from police the other, 80% of what's happening with this gun violence is drug related. Let's get to them before they get to the drugs, and before the drugs get to them, And let's look at how we can possibly use some of that money, that $1 million, to help with the preventive end. And one of the things that I want us to be able to do is to expand TFLA so that these children can work year-round instead of just in the summertime, so that they have access to legitimate money. Continued congratulations to the Tempo program for being able to get $500,000. The governor actually sent that this way, so we thank you, Governor DeSantis. So please send more. We want to be able to use all available dollars to try to make sure that we prevent it on the front end. And I think that looking at listening to Mr. Leland saying, tell us what you're gonna do with it. Well, we're trying to tell you, we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out how we're gonna do this, you know. The problem with having $1 million is you gotta figure out how you judiciously split it out to give it to everybody so that it's equitable. So I think that those are all some potential funding sources that we need to take advantage of. And then by the time we get back to our next budget meeting, hopefully this gap will close and we'll be able to do more of these things. But I too want to continue the conversation. I want to keep the animal shelter in. I want to keep the COCA in, Oasis, and the Status of Women and Girls, St. Francis, and STAC. Let's do the things that we know we need to do to keep our community whole. And Robert and staff, let me just commend you. It's hard counting these peanuts because things are still happening and that you can't control. And so you're trying to look in the crystal ball to figure out what's gonna happen next. You know, we don't know, you know, COVID's still around, COVID's still, you know, we don't know what it's doing. So I think that we just need to keep moving. We're moving in the right direction. We're trending in the right direction. Let's continue to trend. In the meantime, let's look for other available dollars in our community. Help us out. Nonprofits, help us out, help us meet this moment by finding additional dollars in the community that we haven't had before. I think I may have mentioned the Children's Services Council a time or two, right? Yeah. Let's make sure we reach out to them and let's touch them and let's see what we can get from there as well. And then hopefully when we come back, these numbers the gap will be smaller and we'll be able to realize all that we need to realize. So thank you all for the work that you're doing in our community. And of course I do support team. We need more of that. I had a conversation with the police department the other day. We do need more of that as well. So let's continue to look for these dollars. Let's continue to make this happen. And as I close, I will mention, I won't call names, but I heard a conversation recently, someone asking someone who is seeking political office at the state level about the possibility of helping us secure funding, especially because we have so much property off the tax roll. To look at opportunities of how the state can help us offset this because we are at a disadvantage from other communities because we have so much off the tax roll that we're having to operate around. Yeah, it's great to have 2 major universities, but guess what? You said it, Ms. Collier Brown. So let's encourage that. Let's keep talking about that. That won't happen this year, but let's keep talking about it. Maybe somebody will hear us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, for motion.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to
Microphone.
let, in terms of what Commissioner Williams-Cox said about the gun violence appropriation, we are looking to the community to give us ideas on that. We had some recommendations made prior to the last workshop. We weren't satisfied with what came to us, and so we had directed the city manager to go back to the community and find out what the community, and I heard that there are some ideas that will be coming forth from the criminal justice ministry, criminal justice action ministry. Capital action. There are so many acronyms out there, I can't keep up with them all. But that we are going back to the community looking for ideas. And so if you've got ideas and you think that it's something that will help us to impact what's going on, especially tragedies that just happened in our own community, then we welcome those ideas. And if it's appropriate for that funding, then it will be considered for funding, but we aren't saying that we've got the answers. We can't have the answers. There is no one answer, not to that issue. A father going home and shooting his wife and 2 kids. We don't have an answer to anything like that. None of us do. But all of us working together, as Commissioner Williams-Cox said, we can come up with some proposed solutions that we can see if they are going to work in our community or not. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we accept staff recommendation to accept the report this evening, and that we continue to see what we can do to address the requests that have been made tonight as we reach that July date when we will actually have some hard numbers to deal with.
Second.
Okay. It's been properly moved staff recommendation by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Final comments? Seeing none?
Let me just say this, Mr. Mayor, because I hear some conversation in the audience. All suggestions and proposals are welcome. So bring them, bring them.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Folks, before we close out tonight, I just want to remind each and every one of you, it's been a very rough day in our community, and I encourage you tonight to take a second and think about the law enforcement officer of Tallahassee Police Department that gave his life in the line of duty today, and his family and all of the Tallahassee Police Department family that's grieving today along with the city. All right, we stand adjourned.